Begin the current Daf Mesechtes Gitin Daf Pei Gimel. Begin 8 lines down at the top of the Yamid, where the Gemara introduces a long discussion regarding the machlekes we have in the previous Daf when we started the 9th Perek HaMegarish. We spoke about a machlekes regarding someone who divorces his wife, and he tells her, "You permit it to everyone, ela lepleni," which we discuss exactly. Does that mean chutz from pleni? Or does it mean almanas, that you're not going to get married to pleni? But be that as it may, we had a machlekes Relez in the Chacham. Relez says, yeah, it's going to work. And obviously she just can't get married to that person. Chacham say, this is a gerushin? Well, what is that? It's not a gerushin. You're not permitted to every single person. So that was the machlekes. Our Gemara is going to start off with a brisa that's going to say that after Rebbe Lezer passed away, everyone started filing and saying, Azad, Shita, how could he say such a thing that it's going to be matter, that's going to be a valid gerushin? The Gemara is going to discuss at length the merit of each one of these opinions. Sure, it corresponds to the Kazakh and the Cheskha turn to Daf Chaim, which I'm turning to today's Daf. So I'm going to discuss in today's Daf, like we said, of the 6 challenges, Rabbi Eliezer's opinion, that if the husband excludes pleni, she is divorced. Meaning, even though it's not a full divorce, you're permitted to everyone, I'm divorcing you, but this one guy, no. Him you can't marry. Lezer says it's going to be valid. There's going to be 6 different opinions. Opinion number 1, meaning the challenges, they're saying why it's not valid, is let's say she goes and let's say this guy is Reuven. We love Reuven. Reuven's always the guy that we pick on. She said you can marry anyone but Reuven. And Reuven has a brother Shimon. Shimon is then going to die without any children. What's going to be then with Yibum over there? She obviously can't do Yibum with Reuven, so you're being oiked the mitzvah of Yibum. That's going to be question number 1. Question number 2 is, where do you ever find such a thing that a woman is permitted to one person but forbidden? But where do you find any time that there's something that's permitted to some? It's other usa the mitzvah. She's permitted to others. She's also. Question number 3 is going to be davar karis b'nei lebina. Krisis is separation, the severance. There's not a severance if she's still forbidden to one person because of him. Question number 4 is going to be the b'nisis lazeh shenesralav. What happens if she gets married to someone else? Okay, not this guy. But then, 10 years later, this guy courts her, obviously. The husband was afraid of this guy. And then she marries him after she already married someone else. It's going to come out retroactively, the get is bottled, because she ended up marrying this guy. It means the children she had from marriage number 2, now that she's moving on to marriage number 3, all the children of Mamzechim, it turned out she was never divorced. Question number 5 is more of a complex one. What happens if this guy that she was forbidden to, this one guy that's even is a kohen, and then the Mesa Megarish, the one who divorced her, the original guy, dies. So you tell me for everyone else, she's an almana, and she would be permitted to marry kohen, but this guy, meaning to the contrary, meaning for everyone else, she was a grisha, but for this guy, she was never divorced. So for him, she's going to be an almana, and actually going to be permitted. But the Gemara is going to explain exactly what the parameter of that question is. And question number 6 is makish koid me'avayishni l'koid me'avayishni. The pasuk equates that in the one pasuk talking about a woman getting married, then moving on to another man. So we compare how she was before the first marriage to how she's before the second marriage. Just as before the first marriage, she's not connected to anybody. So the second marriage, she also shouldn't be. Can't be that she's still connected to the first husband, that she's forbidden to this one person. So the Gemara is going to tell us that Rabbi says, Kulu islu pircha, all these questions itself are flawed, meaning the questions have questions on them, they're not good questions. One of the questions the Gemara is going to say, his question is a valid question on Rabbi Lezer, this Rabbi Lezer ben Azariah, and that would be a difficulty on Rabbi Lezer's opinion. Then the Gemara continues on to says, just like we're talking about partial divorce, because it's not permitting her for everyone. What happens if a husband says, Hayami eyat ishti, ishti, mahu. Today you're not my wife, but tomorrow you are my wife. Which is basically saying that today you're divorced and tomorrow you're not divorced. What would the halacha be? But then the Gemara is going to say you can ask it according to either one of the opinions mentioned in our Mishnah. So we begin the current Daf, Daf Pei Gimel, like we said in the previous Mishnah, we said, Hamagarish is if someone divorces his wife. And he tells her, look, you're permitted to every single person, ela leploini. So we said Rabbi Lezer is mater. He says, okay, give me a valid gerushin. Machlekes is in Rabbi Lezer's opinion. Our Mishnah holds, even if he states chutz leploini, which he's shiur la beget, he's leaving over into the get, still Rabbi Eliezer holds going to be valid because we find we find that even if a woman's divorced only from her husband, a kohen can't marry her. We find that there is an element of gerusha, even if you're not permitted to anyone. Definitely if you're permitted to everyone besides one person. So that would even be if you say chutz, that you left over something in the get. Our Mishnah holds that according to Rabbi Eliezer, that would be a valid get. The Brisa holds no, only if he states amanash le'tinasil plani. Only if you say on the condition you don't marry that person. Okay, that's midav kol t'nai ba'alma. It's merely condition attached to the yet. But however, if he states chutz le'plani, she would not be divorced because he has shiur la beget. Now we said in the Brisa that Rabbi Eliezer b'megash his sister b'amla reit meteres chalad chutz meplani. Like we said that, as we said, me'achar shenis is meaning if he says that you're permitted to everyone chutz meplani in this case, and then she gets married to someone else, then the Brisa would agree that she would be permitted to the one that she's forbidden on, because as Rashi says, we're going to see that in today's daf also. But now the Gemara starts over the Brisa. After Rabbi Eliezer passed away, there are 4 elders that came to respond and retort regarding his words, meaning they were coming to slug up what he said, that how could you say that the woman's going to be considered divorced even though you said Ela L'Plaini, except for that person. And Elohim, the 4 Talmidei Chacham, Rabbi Lili, Rabbi Tarfon, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Akiva. These 4 Talmidei Chachamim had a response to his opinion. Now, so then Rabbi Tarfon spoke up, which Rashi says Nena means like he lifted up his voice. Whenever it says a Nena, it means that's saying it out loud. But he says, let's say this woman, this is question number 1. This woman goes after she gets divorced, and she gets married to the brother of that guy, meaning this one guy that the husband says you're divorced for everyone, besides for this man. So for him, you're not considered divorced. If she marries his brother, meaning that shenesra love, that she became forbidden on him with the divorce, now Shimon will call him, the brother of this guy, dies without any children. Is it not going to come out that the one who's divorcing her, this original husband, isn't he Iker Dav min HaTorah? Isn't he uprooting a biblical halacha of the mitzvah yibum? Because now she's forbidden to do yibum to the brother of her second husband, because regarding him, this Reuven, she's still considered married to her original husband. Halamata, you learn she'ein zekrises. This obviously is not a divorce that's written in the Torah, because the Torah would not tell you a krisis that uproots another halacha from the Torah, which is the halacha of yibum. You wouldn't be able to do the mitzvah yibum in that situation. No, she can marry Shimon. Oh, so we'll see that. Yeah, exactly. So the Gemara is going to discuss that regarding is it chutz or almanas. Exactly. That's a good point. That's going to come up. But for now, we're assuming that no, even if she marries someone else, that let's say you say almanas, right? So then that would uproot it retroactively, even if you married someone else in between, and because ultimately she married this guy, so that means okay, the divorce is off. No, if she would, I understand. Meaning, but if she would do yibum, right? If she would do yibum, if she ended up marrying Reuven, the whole divorce originally from this Levi was off. The whole thing is you only divorce Ela L'Plaini. So if you hold almanas, if you say it's on condition that you don't do this, or anytime you say on condition, if you don't fulfill the condition, the whole divorce is off. You're never divorced. So if she marries the brother of this Reuben, she obviously wouldn't be able to do yibum, because then she'd be marrying Reuben, and if she marries Reuben, that means she was never divorced in the first place, and she's forbidden to everyone in the world.
It's stipulated in the game itself.
Yeah. So this is he said it. He said it, or he wrote it, whichever one. That was a stipulation. So that's question number 1 about the Torah is not going to tell you to do a krisis that would make you forbidden to do a mitzvah in the Torah, and obviously it can't be like Rabbi Eliezer says that it's going to be a valid get. Now that was question number 1. Question number 2 is Nanda Rabbi Saglili Rama. He says, wait a second, Heichen mitzinu. Where do we find in this context? It's a woman. Asl lazeh mut lazeh. Where do you find something that or the Taraif, or the Kusha. For one person, the Ruf says it's Kusha, another he says it's Taraif. What does that mean? How could this woman be forbidden to this guy, but permitted to everyone else? Rather, Ha'asar Asar Ko, when something forbidden to everyone. Whatever's permitted for everyone. Alamata, you come to learn. Change the creases. This can't be a creases. Again, question number 2 of Nebuchadnezzar. How could he say that this woman is going to be permitted to everyone, but forbidden to this guy? Question number 3. Then Rabbi Elazar ben Nazari says, creases, the state in the Torah, you write a sefer creases, a book of severance. Creases is davar kodesh b'noi lebina. It separates between him and her, but they're still connected to make her forbidden on that one person. Al-matter, you learn change the creases. This is not a creases. Again, can't be like Rabbi Elazar that's being a matter. It will not be a valid get. Question number 4. Then Rabbi Kiva spoke up and he said, okay, let's say this woman goes, according to Rabbi Elazar, who is permitted to marry anyone but this one guy, marries a friend, someone from the street. She had a whole family of 12 kids. And this Ameling is Garsha. She gets widowed or gets divorced. Then later on in life, she meets up with this other guy. And she gets married to this guy who she was forbidden to get married to. Get bottle. Isn't it going to come out that retroactively comes that the get was nullified because he told her on the condition that you don't marry that person? So it comes out, but now our children from the middle person are mamzerim, are all illegitimate children now. So he finds that untenable. He says, Almata, you come to learn she'in the creases. The Torah would not tell you a creases that would bring Jewish children to be invalid. Question number 5 is still Rabbi Kiva, but Dava Achar. Another question that Rabbi Kiva had was like this. Hadei Shal Yazeh, a very interesting one. If this guy, Shenestral love, that she was forbidden to, this one guy, this Rivin, was a Koyin. Okay, now, Umeisa Megarish, if her original husband, the one who divorced her, dies, Loi Nimtzis Almona Etzloi, isn't not going to come out that for this Koyin, this Ruvain, regarding him, she was never divorced. That's why she was not permitted to Reuven, because for him she wasn't divorced. So it comes out that for him she's a widow, which kind of not permitted a widow. But the grusha it's a koladam. Right, that we're going to see that also. All these questions are like I'll bring up is depends on what you're qualifying. Is it chutz or almanas? That's what we discussed in the previous episode. I'm going to discuss again that there's a huge difference, even though to us it might sound like semantics or some technical legalities, but it's a huge difference if you say chutz or almanas. Almanas is that there's a divorce, it's just a condition. Chutz is that no, for you there's no divorce. So we're going to see that the Gemara is going to discuss in each one of these opinions. Well, what does he hold that he's asking? Is it chutz or almanas? And that's the huge ramification regarding each one of these opinions. But we're saying for him, this one Reuven, she's a widow. But v'grusha it's a koladam. But she's divorced by everyone else. Now, as Rashi adds on to the words, which is important, because of the element of divorce that she has from everyone else, the Torah makes her forbidden on him, as the Gemara had previously said on the previous Amid. We say in the pasuk, and this was a very technical question, grusha meisha. We said the isha grusha meisha leikacha. The kahanim are not allowed to marry a grusha. Now the pasuk doesn't just say you can't marry a grusha. It says grusha meisha. Of course, you get divorced from her husband. So the Gemara in the previous Amid said, even if you only divorced from your husband, meaning the husband says you're divorced from me, but you're not permitted to anyone else. So what is this? Is it a joke? But even such a case, it's as some scent of a get shall be forbidden to kahanim. So this woman, who, even though technically for Reuven she's an almana, and she should be permitted to him, she's not going to be permitted to him. Why not? She's an almana. She was never divorced for Reuven because she was divorced from everyone else. Even if you just isha grusha meisha, you're already forbidden to kahanim. For sure, if you grusha from everyone else, so she'll be forbidden to this Reuven. Okay. So the Gemara says like this. So the kal v'chomer, you could learn out a kal v'chomer from this idea that before the Megarish passed away, that for sure she should be forbidden to everyone else because of the marriage that's still there regarding that Reuven. Right? Because before he died, she still considered married to her original one her ex in regards to Reuven. Because for Reuven, she's not divorced. So it says the Gemara like this. What's the Kavach Chaimer? Ma, if we find the Isser of Grusha, of a divorcee, Shehikala, which is a light Isser, because it's only a negative prohibition. It's not Karis or whatever. Even so, we find that Asura, she becomes forbidden on this Kayin, who she's really an almana to and should be permitted to this Reuven, but she becomes forbidden to him b'shul tzad gedish in Shabbat. Because the element of divorce that's in her regarding everyone else, that's enough to make her forbidden to this Reuven, who she should really be permitted to. Because of the tzad gerushin that's in her somewhere regarding everyone else. Oh, says the Gemara, I'll tell you kavachayma. A married woman, having a relationship with a married woman is much more severe. It's a chiv misa, more than just a kohen marrying a grusha, which is only a lav. So, which a more severe isser, loy kolshkin isn't all the more so that she should be forbidden to the one that she's permitted to, which are everyone else, because of the element of ishus that's on her from that Ruvain, from that chutznik. Interesting. It's a complex question, but halamata, you learn from the she'in's a krisis. That can't be a krisis because you're married. Well, not married. You divorced her regarding everyone else. Yeah. But there's a tzad ishus that's in the Ruvain, and you're telling me the other way around for him that the grusha, which is a leichte isser, is going to make her forbidden on him, even though for him she's an almana, but because there's a tzad gerush from everyone else, so isher more chamer from this Reuven should definitely make it forbidden for everyone else. So obviously there's no creases. Obviously he's not divorced regarding them. That's a mouthful. But that was Rabbi Kiva's second question that he had on Rabbi Lezer. Now, however, Omlan Rabbi Shur said after he heard this, he says that we don't respond to the lion after he passed away. Meaning, if he would be alive, maybe he would have an answer for you. We can't start slugging him up now that he's not here anymore. And Amar Rava says, Kulu Islu Pircha. He says, all the questions, Taka, all of them have a flaw, as the Gemara is going to continue to explain, after it brings support from a brisa, like Rava says, but he says all of them have a question. All the questions have a question. Labar Mid Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, the one number 3 that we have brought, besides his, the less Pircha, there's no flaw in his question on Rabbi Elazar. But first the Gemara says, Tanem Hach, similar in the Brisa, that Amar B'Yisi says, Royan is Elazar ben Azariah and Kulan. So the first thing Gemara just brings a Brisa to support and say, yes, like what Rabbi said, that really the best question is Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, but all the other ones have difficulties on their question. As the Gemara goes back through each one of these to show that it's not such a stark kasha. Why? So Amamar, we go through the Brisa again. Question number 1 was Nen Reb Tafrin. Tafrin spoke up, and he said like this. He says, Rabbi Elazar, come on. How's it possible? If this woman's going to go, she's going to go to the brother of this guy, Shenesel, that she was forbidden on. And then her husband dies around the children. Like them says, isn't it going to come out that this original Megarish is going to be uprooting a biblical halacha of Yibum because now she can't do Yibum? Says the Gemara, Oikir? Uprooting? Ihu Akar? He's uprooting? In other words, is he uprooting? It's happening by itself, indirectly caused by him. Because Oikir sounds like that he's mamish doing an Isser with his own hands. But this Yibum is not incumbent upon him to have her do Yibum like as if he's being Oikir. It's indirectly happening by the fact of him saying that you're divorced besides for this guy. Ella rather says, no. Masna lakadev natera. He's making a stipulation that's uprooting a halacha from the Torah. Says the Gemara, Masna? He's stipulating? Mi kamarla, did he tell her leisagi la that the divorce is not enough? They shouldn't get married to the brother of that person. In other words, it's nothing to do with him She didn't have to marry that brother of this guy. So what is it that you're saying that he's uprooting this halacha of yibum? The Rebbe says, no, goyim lakadim natayla. You're right. He's not making a stipulation on this to uproot it, but he didn't make her marry the brother to then have him die and then be uprooted. But he is indirectly causing it to uproot halacha of natayla. It says, goyim. He's causing this to be uprooted. What do you mean? If that's the case, bas achiv lo yisa. Even though actually it says in the Gemara many times that you should marry your sister's daughter, so that you do a mitzvah of in the family, but then a person should never marry his niece. Why? Because maybe he's going to die without any children. Is going to come out that he's uprooting a biblical mitzvah even because her father, which is his brother, won't be able to do yibum on his daughter. So what are you marrying your niece for? You're not going to. So your brother, who you married his daughter, is not going to do yibum, right? Obviously, that's not considered ikir davim in Torah. So what's your taina on this guy under Rabbi Eliezer, the way he's explaining that? You're going to cause yibum to be uprooted, and marrying your niece is not also uprooting yibum to be done. So the Gemara says, you're right. Hainu pircha. That was Rabbi's what he said that all of them have a pircha. This is the pircha on Reb Tarfon's question under Rabbi Eliezer. Your gross taina is you're uprooting mitzvah natera, and marrying a niece is not uprooting a mitzvah natera. So now the Gemara clarifies, and like we said before, as people were mentioning, we're going to explain how each one's question was dependent on how they learned the word ela pleni. As we mentioned, ela pleni could be either translated as chutz mi pleni or amanashali tenasi pleni. So the Gemara says like this: Ubamai. How was Reb Tarfon explaining the machlekes Reb Elazar and Rabbanan that he was asking on Reb Elazar his question of that you're going to be uprooting dav min haTorah b'yibum, and that is like this: if you think to say that he was learning that ela pleni means chutz b'pleni, wait a second, then you don't even have a question on Reb Elazar, because Reb Elazar actually permits to actually do yibum, and this was a question you were asking before, to the one that she was forbidden to after she was divorced by someone else, after she got married to someone else, because then she actually gets removed from her first marriage totally. It's like it's not there anymore. Because the time we learned in the Brisa that Moed Reb Elazar agrees, even though he says that you're forbidden to that one guy, but you permitted to someone else. He agrees. Let's say someone divorces his wife and he says to her, this case, but again, chutz, very important. The word chutz is over here, very important. If someone says to his wife, you're permitted to everyone else except for that person, she gets married to some random guy that she meets in the hotel. She gets widowed or gets divorced. She actually becomes permitted to this guy that she's been in. And the reason is, very importantly, is because, as Taisa explains, the whole original issues that you have with the first guy gets emptied out. You can't be married to two people. When you get married to the second person, it liquidates the whole marriage you had with the first person. So I don't care whatever conditions you had, it doesn't make a difference. It's all gone. Because that was chutz. Chutz is holding on to your marriage, saying you're permitted to everyone except for this. Not a t'nai. It's chutz. So Rabbi Elazar agrees, when she gets married to someone else, you're done, you're liquidated already. So you could have conditions where it doesn't make a difference. Meaning, when I say condition, meaning not a condition, but a chutz. A condition, actually, yeah, as we're going to see in a moment. So what are you asking Rabbi Elazar saying? And what's going to happen? This was the question you were saying. She's marrying Shimon, and then he's going to die without any children. You're going to be oiker. What oiker? Rabbi Elazar says actually allowed to marry Reuben then. Because even though he said chutz, that gets liquidated the moment she gets married to Shimon. Says the Gemara, no, elabal manas. Must be the Reb Tarfon that was explaining Machlek Reb Elazar and the Chum, and that's why he was asking Reb Elazar. He said there's a pirch on this question. That's what he's asking, because since it's a Tanai, and the Tanai is not fulfilled, comes out that the whole get was batal l'mafreya. Comes out she was always an iservacious ish, with Shimon also. But akapanim, therefore, it's going to come out that you can be oiker, the meaning obviously you can't do yibum because then it would be that she was a married woman even with Shimon. So that way he was asking, you being oiked matera. Okay, we have a flow with that. But at least we know that he was asking specifically, he understands elaplaini means almanas. And then you could ask your question. Okay, that was question number one. Question number two was Nen basically spoke up and he said like this. He says, he says, come on, where do you find such a thing? What, she's forbidden to this guy, but permitted to this guy? What do you mean? Things are black and white. It's forbidden to everyone. It's permitted for everyone. Says the Gemara, what, you don't find things that are permitted for some and forbidden for others? We have truma, we have kachim, it's permitted to this one, forbidden to this one, meaning a regular straw is forbidden, but kahanba permitted to eat truma and kachim. Says the Gemara, no, but isha kaminan. When we're talking about prohibition regarding a woman, we don't find some permitted, some forbidden. The Gemara says, what do you mean, varei arayis? What do you mean? One's daughter, one's sister, that's only for the relative. Everyone else could marry them. So you see, it's aslazeh mutlazeh. There's no beish is coming in. We meant someone who's forbidden through marriage, because of a marriage, we don't find that she's forbidden to one and permitted to another one. So the Gemara says, what? No, meaning in marriage, meaning when you're married, because of marriage, we don't find that there should be any difference. Yeah, that's after the marriage when she has a state of being a grusha. But because of marriage, marriage prohibits. When you get engaged, it prohibits on everyone else. We don't find that it's going to prohibit on one and not on the other. So the Gemara says, what do you mean? Hari ish is ish. We find the married woman that, through marriage, she's permitted to her husband and forbidden to everyone else. So it's asur lezeh, muteris lezeh. The Gemara says, Haina pircha. That was what Rabbi said before, that all of them have a pircha. That the question was that you find that there is a difference, that you can be permitted to one and forbidden to other. And that's the same thing by this chutznik also, that she's going to be forbidden to him, but permitted to everyone else. So don't ask on Rabbi Lezer. But now the Gemara goes again to clarify. Ubamai, how did Rabbi Yosi Haglili understand Rabbi Lezer that permitted this such a gerushin when you have a chutz that he was asking a question on him? How did he understand the machlekes? So the Gemara explains. If you think to say he understood, as we said in Reb Tarfon, that he held it was almanas, that actually wouldn't work. Then the question wouldn't start. Because hare hutra etzle biznus. Very interesting. Because if he said that you're permitted to everyone, ella leplaini, and you tell me ella means on the condition you don't marry that guy, so what's the condition? The condition was, as long as you don't get married to that person. But if she was mezana that person, that he didn't make any such tnoim. So in a way, she is permitted to everyone in znus. If you say, as the Gemara is going to say, with chutz, that's different. But if you say almanas was only that you don't get married. So, but if that's the condition, that means she is permitted. She's permitted to everyone. She's permitted to this Reuben also with znus.
You would think that's an included language. I mean, clearly doesn't want her to be with that person, even if it's
I hear. The Gemara understands it as like about not getting married. I guess usually people don't really say things that they're not necessarily thinking of, so maybe that wasn't included in his condition. But the Gemara says here, not like Reb Tarfon. He learns ela b'chutz. Rabbi Yitzchak was explaining the machlekes of Rabbi Eliezer that he said chutz mipleni. So therefore he's asking his question, because if you're saying chutz mipleni, she's totally forbidden on him, even with znus, because regarding him, she's not divorced. She's Eishes Ish. So obviously can't be Mizana, that's Eishes Ish. So he understood it in chutz, and therefore he asked his question. Tarfon understood Almanas, that's why he asked his question. So you see, it's so fine over here how each one understood it to be able to ask their question. But again, we have a flaw with this question too, because we do find Eishes Ish, for example, that's permitted to the husband and forbidden to everyone else. Question number 3 was actually question number 4, because question number 3 is the one that we like, and there's no pirchan. Question number 4 is Nen Rabbi Kiva Amar. Kiva, he spoke up and he said, what do you mean? If this woman goes and she gets married to someone from the street, and she had children, in this kasha, that gets widowed or gets divorced, and then she gets married to this guy who was forbidden on her, isn't going to come out retroactively that the get is bottle and the children mamzerim? And the Torah would never do such a thing. Says the Gemara, what do you mean? If that's the case, every time there's a condition, she should not be allowed to get married. Maybe she's not going to fulfill the condition. And maybe the get's going to be how could you ever do a Tanai? Yeah, I know Pircha. That is the Pircha on Rabbi Kiva. That what do you mean? It's not a good question because then you could ask her every Tanai. Okay, so now the Gemara clarifies here also. B'mai. How did Rabbi Kiva understand the Machlek the Chacham of our Mishnah? That he's asking his question, as the Gemara explains. If he understood it as Elu L'Pleini means Chutz Mipleini, so then Mishra Shur Belazar. So we mentioned this point before, that according to Belazar, actually, even if she gets married afterwards, the children of the middle one are not going to be mamzerim, because actually, if you hold its chutz, that actually liquidates the original marriage. So if she marries the second guy, then this Oster guy, number 3, it's not going to make the B'nai Mamzera because it's time to learn the Brisa. Moider Belazar agreed, someone divorces his wife and he says, not Amanas, Chutz me playing, except for this person. She gets married to someone else from the street. She gets widowed, gets divorced. Which actually is permitted to the one that she became forbidden on. So it wouldn't retroactively make it mamzerem for the second husband because you're actually allowed to marry that guy because he liquidated his original marriage. So the Gemara says, Almanas must be Rabbi Kiva understood that the question was that the machlokes was Almanas. Almanas doesn't get liquidated. That's a condition stipulating. And therefore he was able to ask this question. Again, we had a flaw in this question because then you could ask the question on every tonight. But like upon him, that was question number 4 with its flaw.
Marrying third guy.
Yeah.
Is for her. It has nothing to do with the second person. It doesn't
No, but that means she was never divorced. If you told me I'm a nas, what?
It's not a condition in the get.
If he says, if you talking about amanas or chutz? Yeah, chutz we said is not going to be a problem because that liquidated. But if you say amanas,
even if you don't say that, you don't need that star.
Why?
Because the get is still a get. She just is doing something she's not allowed to do.
If you say amanas, if you say on the
yeah,
so you mean say we don't need to have the svar of liquidation?
right.
Why? If you say
if she does something usher, it doesn't change.
Yeah. In the Chalam, you're saying that what would happen if you say chutz? She's permitted to have except for this guy. You wonder if she ends up having a relationship with him. I hear it probably goes together with that svara of liquidation, right?
Even if she marries
right. That's a chiddush. That's still a chiddush to say that, right? It's still going to be a get if she does something that's wrong because she gets with this third guy. Why should it make the children? Why would it even make? Right.
Even if she marries Reuben right away.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Taisus has a similar shmooze that he says the marriage wouldn't take effect. It's also because H is ish. Right. Taisus has a similar question. He says that about how what would this be? Yeah. It's a good question. Right. But Al-Kabam, either one is that. But chutz definitely wouldn't make it a problem. But so we said it's almanas. But then the Gemara has Dava Acher, Rabbi Kiva's second version. Yeah, and his second question was if let's say this guy, again, there was a very complex one that we just spoke about, if the guy that she was forbidden on was a kohen, who made some garish, and the one who originally divorced her died, we said wouldn't it come out that really for Ruvain she should be a widow? She actually should be permitted to marry, ironically, this guy because she's only from Almana. But a grusha it's kaladam. But we said really she's considered divorced for everyone else. So therefore we said she actually becomes forbidden to him because of the tzad gerushin of grusha meisha. So we said kavachaymer. So it's kavachaymer. We said a ma grusha yikal. We said if the issa grusha, which is a very lenient type of a isser, asura, she's forbidden to that koyin that was the chutznik mishum tzad gerushin shabbat because the element of divorce by everyone else. So H is chamur. So we said by the issa of H, which is more severe. Loy Kolshkin isn't all the more so that she's been forbidden for others, and then we see that she is forbidden to others, not permitted to the others. That's how that was question number 2. So the Gemara says, wait a second, Obamai. How is Rabbi Kiva qualifying this machlekes that he's asking his question? If you say it's on conditions as Gitin Daf Beis, Hare Grusha Etzle Biznus. Similar point we mentioned before, but that means to say she is divorced for him regarding Znus, meaning as we said, even though you had the question before, he only made it forbidden on this guy to marry him. But for znus, she really is divorced even to him right away. So therefore, if her first husband passes away, the element of gerushin was also by this guy forever. So therefore, like Rashi explains, that then there wouldn't be any kabel chomer, because then you could ask and say, wait a second, I understand why this guy, this Reuben, that the reason why he's forbidden, even though really for her, towards him, she's namana. But because of the element of gerushin that there is, because even by him, there was a tzad of gerushin. What do you mean there was a tzad of gerushin for him? Because even for him, if you hold that it was almanas, so almanas was only don't get married to him, but for znus, she is divorced klape him. So how could you say that the kavachimer, that to make everyone else forbidden on her because of the element of ishus that she has by this one guy, but that's not ishus, it's only by him, not by anyone else. It's not a good kavachimer essentially, because if you hold it's amanas means to say on the condition that you don't marry this guy, but she is divorced klapi him regarding znus, so of course I can understand why therefore he would be forbidden to her even when the Megarish dies and she's almana, because there is an element of gerushin by him also. But how could you compare that to make a kabel chaimer for the tzad ishus that is still by him to make everyone else forbidden, but they have no element of ishus? So therefore, the Gemara says that wouldn't be a good question. El b'chutz must be that Rabbi Kiva understood the teaching of Rabbi Eliezer was with chutz. So that means to say that even for znus, she's not divorced to this one guy, because chutz says, besides, you're not divorced regarding him. That means even for znus, you were eishes ish. Oh, so then that would be a good question by saying, okay, there's no element of gerushin by him, and yet we see, even though it's an Issachar, he is going to be forbidden for as a Gurusha. So, Kavachayim, more severe, should be forbidden. Then the Gemara asked on Rabbi Kiva, wait a second. Rabbi Kiva has two questions. One, if you recall, was based on the principle of chutz, like we just said, and the previous question was based on the principle of learning an almanas. So the Gemara says, wait a second, Rabbi Kiva, I don't understand. If he holds that the machlokes Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbanan was, when you say ela plani means chutz miplani, so Leisav, you should only ask this last question of chutz, which was based on the principle of saying the question you'll have if you say chutz. The amanas really, if he holds this on the condition, Leisav amanas only ask the first question, which is based on the principle of amanas. But how is he asking both questions? Says the Gemara, Rabbi Kiva Shmiele, Kiva heard the ikar the amar chutz, are those who want to explain ela plani as chutz miplani. The ikar the amar amanas, those who want to say it's on the condition not to marry that person. So man damar chutz, the one who holds that it was chutz miplani. Hyperchi asked the second question. On the Manas, the one that says the Manas, Hyperchi asked the first question. It says the Gemara, Umay Pircha. What question could we ask on this last question of Rabbi Kiva, who held that there's a Kabal Chaimer? If this Chutz guy is a Kayin, the Rabbi said all of them have a Pircha, what's the question on this second question of Rabbi Kiva? Because if you're going to say that, okay, maybe I'll say the Isra of Kun is different because we find by Kahanim there's many mitzvahs more than the regular Yisrael. So maybe you're going to say on Rabbi Kiva, wait a second, so there's no Kavach Chaimer to others from the Isra of Eishes Ish, because what do you mean? The Isra of Kahuna is different. You could say that the Kayin will be forbidden as a Gerusha, even though there's no element of Gerusha on him, because he's like the Tzad Gerushin that is by others, because Kahuna is more severe, because it's Kahanim have many more lavan than other Yisraelim. But who said the fact that there's a Tzad Ishus that there is by him going to make it forbidden on everyone else? Maybe you'll say that's the Pircha on Rabbi Kiva's Pircha. Says Gemara, that can't be a good question, because Rabbi Eliezer that says that she's forbidden, that she's permitted to everyone except for him. He brings it from this a finer point over here. He brings it from the Isakun itself. If you recall from the previous daf, the pasuk says, "V'isha grusha me'isha." If a woman is divorced from her husband, meaning only divorced from her husband, she becomes pasuk to kahuna. And that's actually the source where we learn out that when you make this woman partially divorced, that she's going to be forbidden to kahuna, meaning to say that it's going to be a get, even though you left over something, we're going to consider as a get. That's where we learn out this leniency of saying, even though you say el laplaini, it's still going to be a good get. What do you mean? It's not full divorce. Yeah, we see in halacha from the ishta grusha meisha, even though it's not full get, it's still going to work. See here also, it's where we're going to learn that this leniency. Rabbi Elazar's whole source of his teaching was from this halacha of kahuna. And meaning we don't say Issa Kahuna Shani. We don't say, no, the Issa Kahuna is different. You can't learn that from there. So as Rashi explains the Gemara's question, so if you're learning out the whole halach of Rabbi Eliezer from Issa Kahuna, a kula, to say that a chatzi gerushin is going to work for those that she's divorced for, so for sure you could ask, according to him, to learn that from Issa Kahuna l'chumra, and to say, just like the tzad of gerushin passes off a kahuna, if he dies, for sure the tzad isha that she has by that person should be forbidden for everyone else, because that's the whole source of the halacha. So you can't tell me Issa Kahuna Shani to say you can't ask from there if the whole source is from there. So Gemara says, no, it's not a difficult, because if you recall, there were actually two different sources for this halacha. Rava that said that all of them have a question, including Rabbi Kiva. There were two sources for this halacha. One of the sources for that of Rabbi Eliezer was from a different pasuk from that of that you're going to be to another man. Meaning, if you recall, we learned was we said in the singular, and the yatsa you're going to another man. Meaning, even if you only permit it to one man, it's going to be a gerushin, even though you're forbidden to others. And he doesn't learn from the Isser of Kuhuna. So there, he could ask under Bekiva to say Isser Kunashani, and it's not difficult on Rabbi Eliezer, because according to that pshat, Rabbi Eliezer's source was not from Kahuna. So you could ask and say Isser Kunashani. So again, a complex point, but again, if you're not learning from that source, then you could ask, and Rabbi could say that Isser Kunashani. Now, ultimately Rabbi Shua said to them that he says, you can't respond to the line after he passed away. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Shua that to say Rabbi Shua holds like Rabbi Eliezer, saying you can't ask on Rabbi Eliezer after he passed away, but as the Gemara is going to shortly quote from a brisa that he also asked on Rabbi Eliezer. So what's he saying? So what he was telling them was, I also have a question on him. But me, however, whether according to me, whether according to you, you can't respond to the line after he passed away. So he basically is saying, even though we have questions, we can't slug him up because of our question, because he's not here to respond. But says the Gemara, my pircha the Rabbi Shua, what ultimately was his pircha also? The time like learn the Bryce, Rabbi Shua says, the pasuk equates the way the woman is before she gets married the second time, meaning when she's single, between she gets divorced and gets married, the way she was before she got married the first time, when she was single before she ever got engaged to the first person. Because the pasuk has kiyikach ish isha, which is kedusha rishon, and then it says v'hoislish achar, which is kedusha shniya. So you see, the pasuk is comparing when she got married the first time to when she gets married the second time. So what is it comparing? It says Yibashu like this: just like before she got married the first time, she was not connected to any other man. That's the way she has to be before she gets married the second time. She's not connected to another man, but this you are connected to another man because you're forbidden to this one other person. And therefore, that is his question on Rabbi Eliezer. Now, Gufa, the Gemara goes back to what we said on Omen Aleph. We had mentioned that Moida Rabbi Eliezer agrees, and we quoted this already before, that when he divorced his wife and he says to her, you're permitted to everyone except for this person. She gets married to someone from the street. She gets widowed, gets divorced. So we said she actually becomes committed to this one that she was forbidden on. So he says, wait a second. Where do we find such a thing? That the marriage from her first husband will make her forbidden on this Ruvain. Now getting married to the second person is going to permit her? How's that possible? I mean, we already said as far from places that it's no, it gets liquidated. But that's his question. He says, how could it be that the first marriage makes her forbidden, the second marriage makes her permitted? Says Veloy? What? You can't have such a thing? Yavama. You have the same principle by Yavama. What happens by Yavama? The Baal Oyser, the husband makes her forbidden to anyone else. The Yava Mater. When the Yava marries her, suddenly she's permitted to everyone else when he dies. So you see that you could have Ze Oyser Ze Mater. Says no, Hasam over there actually Yavam hu ka'asolah. It's the Yavam himself that makes her forbidden to marry anyone else. And therefore, when he marries her, yes, he could permit her to marry anyone else, because the Imi Baal, if you think it's from the husband, Hashar V'kaima. What do you mean? The moment the husband dies, she's permitted to everyone else. It's not the husband making it forbidden. It's the yavam who's around with his zika. And therefore, yes, when he marries, he can permit it, but you can't have one person making it forbidden, one person making it permitted. Says, what do you mean, Hari Nadarim? You have vows, because, what? No, either one. When he marries her and then he divorces her or he dies, yeah, either one. But he could permit her. But then says Gemara, I Nadarb the Neider Iser. We have the one who takes the vow, makes it forbidden, but Chacham Mater, Chacham permits it. You see, Zeh Iser v'Zeh Mater. Says Gemara, Naham Rabbi Yechon, he says, In Chacham Mater, Klum, El B'Charata. How does the Chacham permit it? It's with the regret that he opens up with the one that took the vow, with things that would develop because of the nether. Had you known this in the beginning, you would never have taken the nether. It comes out in the beginning it wasn't a nether. So it comes out, it's not something that one person made it us, one person made it mutter. He's saying it's never us in the first place. So I Hari Hafaras Habal. You have the husband who nullifies the vow, the Ish Naderas, the woman takes the vow, Ubal Mefer, and the husband nullifies it, even without regret. So you see that one person can make something forbidden, one person can make something. What's your greater question you're asking on Rabbi Eliezer? Says, no, Hasim Kidra Pinchas made the Rava. Because Amar Pinchas made the Rava, he said, Kol Naderas, any woman that takes a vow, Al Das Baili Naderas. She's taking the vow with the intention of that her husband's going to be in agreement. And if not, it shouldn't be a nether. So therefore it comes out that it was always her, and it's therefore it's not one person making forbidden, one making permitted, because that's what she had in mind always from the beginning. So that was his question, that, yeah, where do you find such a thing that one can make it us and one can make it permitted? So then Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah, now the Gemara goes back. That was Stam the Brisa. Now the Gemara goes back. We said the third questioner was Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah, and he was the one that we don't have a pircha. All the other ones we said pirchas on. But then Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah of Amar, he spoke up and he said, Krisis is davar kois ben elabena. It separates between him and her. Halamata krisis. This cannot be a krisis because he's still connected to this one Reuben that you've forbidden on because of the first husband. Says the Gemara, that has no pircha like we said. But for Rabbanan and all the other rabbis that we mentioned, that they don't learn that from here, the pircha, they learn it from all these other sources which Rava says are flawed questions. High krisis, what do they do with the pasuk krisis that they're not learning the question from here, which would have been a great pircha? So they needed to teach you something else that we learned in the Brisa. The Brisa says, the husband says to the wife, look, this is you get on the condition that you don't drink wine. That you never go back to your father forever. So we said, that's not going to be a krisis because the only thing that separates them is death. Because up until the day she dies, she's connected to him that she can't drink wine, she can't go to her father's household. That's what krisis teaches you, that's not a severance. But if let's say he says, you only can't drink wine to go to the father for 30 days, how is a krisis? That will be a krisis that Rash says right away, as long as you fulfill the tonight. So that's what they use krisis for. It says, krisis. Now, where does he know it from? He learns it could have said karis, sefer karis, says sefer krisis. Plural to tell you both of these halachas. One, to tell you that it has to be, there's no connection with any conditions such as not drinking or going. And also, it has to be separating from every single person. But the other opinions, Karis, Kris, Darshi, they don't learn that that's a diuk to say that it says Kris instead of Karis, and therefore they only learn that there's one halacha, they couldn't learn that from over there, and therefore they learn from the other sources. Now, the Gemara, once we introduced this teaching, Amar Rava, he says that Hariza Gitech, let's say, he says, this is your get, as long as you don't drink wine all the days that I'm alive. So he says, in the krisis. That's not going to be a krisis. All the days of that person's life, some other person, there is a krisis going to be a get. The Gemara says, I don't understand. What's the difference by that person's life? The dilma will become the tanoy. That guy might die, and then she'll be able to fulfill the condition, and it won't be forever. So his life also. Maybe he'll die, and she'll be able to fulfill his condition, because not forever. It's not. They won't be connected forever because he's going to die. So why is there any difference between him or someone else? The Gemara says, rather say, all the days that I'm alive, all the days that you're alive. Ain't a krisis, not krisis, because that's forever until the day she dies. She's connected to him. All the day that I'm alive, there's someone else. There's a krisis. That is a krisis because again, he might die, or that other person might die, and then they'll be able to fulfill the condition, and therefore that's not a chasara, and it's not a lacking in the krisis. Now, as we mentioned before, that like when we say chutz, that it's not a full gerushin, it's not a krisis. So an interesting question the Gemara introduces like this. If let's say a husband gives a get to his wife and he says to her like this, Hayom iyat ishti, today you're not my wife. Meaning, today itself you should be divorced. But tomorrow you are my wife. Tomorrow won't be a gerushin. So it's a shiur. It's leaving over in the get. Ma wad halacha be? So the Gemara says you could ask this question to Rabbi Eliezer, who we said validates by shiur. Meaning when you say you're divorced from everyone, chutz miplaini, he holds it valid. You could ask the question according to him. And to Baal Rabban, you can ask the question even according to Rabban that say that no, shiur is not good. You can't be divorced besides leaving out one person. How do you ask the question like this? Tiboy, Rabbi Eliezer, you can ask the question, Rabbi Eliezer, Atkan, Rabbi Eliezer, Hassan would refund Rabbi Eliezer say that's going to be okay. When you say you divorce from everyone except for this one person, you know why? Because El Demanda Kashach, but at least for the people that she's permitted for, Kashach La'ilam, it's forever permitted. Over here, no, because you're not permitted forever, you're only permitted for today. Tomorrow you're back married again. Like the Malish, maybe it wouldn't make a difference. Because he'll shiur is okay, you can leave over, and therefore it would be okay. And to brother Rabban, you can ask the question called Rabban also. Because Ad can come Rabban Hazam, what do you find Rabban over there that say that it's going to be puzzle because you didn't divorce from everyone? That's elderly paskim neligama, because she's not totally removed from this husband because she's still connected at all points with this one Ruvain. But Abul Hocha, given the paskim over here, since she's totally severed from him today, because today for everyone, today is the lucky day, you're not married today. Oh, so then you could say Pascha, it's already severed forever, and then she's not his wife anymore until he goes back and gets married to her back again, because there is nothing with this condition. She's totally divorced. So the Gemara says, Basa the boy, how the Pasha, after he asked the question, he answered as we Gitin Daf Pedal and Aleph, Mistab, the logic would tell us, Bain Rabbi Eliezer ben Rabban, keeping the Pascha, that once it stopped, and she's going to be considered divorced forever, because once you're not my wife today, you can't become back my wife again tomorrow without a new kedushin, and therefore she would be totally divorced. Thank you to any time for hosting us.